Hi guys, I'm Leon, and I'm going to be giving you my thoughts as a Masters player on what are the best decks post-Galactic Evolution, and what are the decks that you probably shouldn't be playing if you're trying to climb. Of course, if you enjoy these videos, you already know what to do, big dog. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and let me know down below in the comment section what decks do you think will be the best upcoming in this format. I can't wait to go over and talk about some of the other strategies that I may have missed, or maybe if I was a little bit wrong about as we progress through the season. But let's go ahead and start off with Branded. Branded actually lost Branded Fusion to 1 on the most recent ban list. I think Branded is in a spot where it's going to take a really good pilot to be able to pilot into the Masters level. It's not necessarily a terrible deck, but it is treading water to where it's not being a very probable deck as its totality, but being more so as an engine. Regardless, I really can't wait to see if somebody's going to send in some replays with Branded post the ban list to show that this deck is actually even better than takes a really good pilot. Blackwings, I think there's going to be some really important cards in the format that are going to dominate Master Duel right now. I think one of them being Nibiru and the second one being Book of Moon. Both of those cards are pretty good against Blackwing, so I'm going to put it in the could be better. And I think that that's going to be the running theme for a lot of these strategies in Master Duel is, can you play around some of the more popular cards that players are going to be running? And I expect it to be Book of Moon and Nibiru being really popular in this upcoming format because of the best decks. Blue-Eyes, White Dragon. Again, one of my favorite archetypes, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to say a real challenge. Blue-Eyes has been struggling ever since it's gotten its Blue-Eyes Jet Dragon, or Blue-Eyes has been struggling even with Blue-Eyes Jet Dragon, but I think that it's a really fun and really cool deck, and if you can make it to Masters with this deck, you OG, you just might be Kaiba, big dog. We've been seeing a couple of Chaos decks. This is probably my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh deck right now in Master Duel. I would say that this deck is in the could be better spot. The good thing about this deck is that it can make Chaos Angels, which I think is really, really cool. And then there's Chaos Archfiend and some other very powerful cards. The bad thing is that, unfortunately, the Chaos deck isn't as cohesive as you would want it to be, but it's still a really, really cool. Actually, we're gonna put really, really fun decks, because I think that those are going to be the decks that you'll probably have a lot more fun playing in Master Duel, but it might not be the best choice if you're trying to get that at Masters level. But sometimes you're not even trying to get to that Masters level, you're just gonna want to have fun in Master Duel. So I think that this is gonna be the really sweet spot between not necessarily being a complete jerk playing the game and also still having fun. Dark Magician, I would say, is 100% a real challenge. Dark Magician is not a bad deck, but unfortunately, just like Blue-Eyes, it's going to need some more support to make it better. And Dark World, without the hand loop, I would have to say is a really fun deck. Now, Dark World actually can play around cards like Book of Moon and Nibiru, which means it probably could go a little bit higher, but I'm not sure that the loss of the Silva hand loop is definitely worth it to even play Dark World. That, and it's fairly expensive. You guys let me know what you think about Dark World. Maybe it's a little bit higher, but for right now, I'm going to put it in really fun. The loss of tier limits actually does help this deck. Maybe we could be, it takes a really good pilot. Maybe. Dinos, I'm going to say Dinos are also really fun to play. Unfortunately, they're going to need a little bit more support too, but until then, they make some really good board-breaking interactions. My only beef with Dinos is that it is a ton of ultra rares for a deck like this. I would say Dogmatica takes a really good pilot. We already have Kashtira ripping out extra decks. I think that Dogmatica does a pretty good job at that. And if you ever wanted a strategy that doesn't rely on the extra deck, so Kashtira can't necessarily punish you, but also still be able to use the extra deck effectively, this is probably your go-to deck. Ignister just got Draco Slayer off the Forbidden list to 2. I think that that's huge for the deck. I'm going to put it in takes a really good pilot. Now, this deck will probably auto-lose to Kashtira the moment that they look at your extra deck and realize you're playing a Pendulum deck and get rid of one of your zones. But fortunately enough, cards like Book of Moon could help you on that endeavor, flipping that Kashtira Shenri era face down to allow you to play. Dragons are a Masters level deck. This is the best deck, or one of the best decks in Master Duel. It doesn't have too many bad matchups, and cards like Hand Traps don't necessarily trade well against the strategy. Exosister, I would say, is probably in the really fun category. Again, Some of the more popular cards that I've experienced, that you probably will start experiencing, is Nibiru and Book of Moon, and those cards are really, really good against Exo Sister right now. I would think Fluenda Reese is a deck that takes a really good pilot. As again, flipping cards face down is pretty good. Fluenda Reese not only dodges Nibiru fairly easy, but also Book of Moon. It also has a Book of Moon in its own in Fluenda Reese Snarl, which I think can be really, really impactful. I would say that Runic Furhire is a solid Yu-Gi-Oh choice. Now, unfortunately, the Runic strategy doesn't have the greatest matchup against Kashtira when it gets its new support, but for right now, it does fairly consistent, and this is probably the best version of Runic in Sprite, in my opinion. It's a really, really good deck. Galaxy Eyes with the new support. Now, I have a Galaxy player, HM Powered, that's on my YouTube, or on my Twitch. He jumps in every single time. I love that dude. I don't think Galaxy is a bad deck. I don't think it's a real challenge. I think that it's a really, really fun deck. You guys have to see it, and I hope he shows you a replay with the new Galaxy stuff. It is crazy. Like, the combos and the cool things that he does with this deck is completely bonkers, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's one of the best decks in the game or anything. I think it's really fun, really entertaining, and again, HM, I know you're watching this. I can't wait to see how you cook with this deck. Generator actually does dodge a lot of things going on. It's a deck that takes a really good pilot. It can dodge Nibiru, and of course, it can also dodge a Book of Moon easily. But one thing you have to watch out for this is Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring on your field spell. That can really set you back. So having to learn how to play through that is going to take a pretty good pilot. Kashtira, some people have disagreed with me and say that Kashtira isn't a Masters level deck. Well, Kashtira against the best deck in the game is almost a free win if you know how to play this deck correctly. I think Kashtira is one of those decks where, no, it doesn't have all of the support right now, so it may seem a little bit slow, but it's a reason why players are actually starting to play cards like Book of Moon and Nibiru. It's to be able to counter this deck, and it does it very well to keep the top meta deck in check, which allows so many other decks to flow. So it's not necessarily like how we had with a tier format, where it was just tier limit. It's more like Kashtira's help aiding new cards into the game that changes how we play Yu-Gi-Oh, which is a really good thing. Labyrinth, I would say Labyrinth is a Masters level Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I think Labyrinth is extremely good right now. Labyrinth has most of its support in the TCG or in Master Duel. It's missing a couple of cards, but it's still a really strong strategy and actually puts a complementary angle to both Kashtira and Dragon Link. I think that Marine Cess, I would say Marine Cess takes a really good pilot. There are some factors that are really going against Marine Cess, and this is probably the lowest we've put Marine Cess in a very long time. And it's mainly because those cards that I talked about, I think that Book of Moon and Nibiru are really powerful right now, and that is like this deck's biggest enemy. Flipping your monsters face down before they can link with them and Nibiruing them on the inboard is pretty crazy. I'm going to put it in takes a really good pilot. Heroes, I'm also going to put into really... I'm stuck between these two. I don't think that Heroes are a bad deck, but those two cards that I just mentioned are really, really bad for Hero. Overall, I think that it's a deck that can still play if those cards don't exist, or if you don't draw those cards. It's a really powerful deck, just like how these decks can be really, really strong if you just don't draw those particular cards. Mathmech, with players starting to play Bestials less, hopefully, I would probably still put it in maybe the really fun range. The problem with Mathmech is the Bestials, like I said before. Dragon Link is a Bestial-based deck, and that's probably the only deck that plays Bestial. Maybe it could be actually a solid choice. It did get Terahertz, which is a really good answer to those spells and trap effects. You know what? I'm going to say that Mathmech is a solid Yu-Gi-Oh choice, and I may even have to play it in some high-rated games to be able to test that theory. Because if you think about it, with less tiers, there's less Bestials. With less Bestials, Mathmech becomes a really, really good deck. And the crazy thing about it is that the new Firewall Dragon Terahertz is an amazing card for this strategy. I would say that Melfi Sprite is the second or the best Sprite. Like, if you wanted to go more Sprite cards in your deck available, especially with the hits to the current cards that we have for Sprite and Swap Frog and stuff alike, this is easily the best variant of more Sprite cards, whereas Furhire is the best variant of the combination of Runic and Sprite cards. I also think that Naturias are still fairly powerful. Beast Barkion can win a ton of games. It does have ways to be able to play around Nibiru, and those Runic cards can actually still keep you in the game even when you get your board wiped. Plunder Patrol is actually better than what people will give it credit. A lot of times being able to give your opponent a token is like a free win, and it allows you to dodge popular cards like Kashtira Finra. So it's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh strategy, and we're moving towards dark and light attributes being a little bit more popular. I think that Plunder Patrol is pretty solid. P.U.N.K, I would say P.U.N.K is... I want to actually give P.U.N.K a solid choice, but the biggest problem with P.U.N.K is those book cards and the Nibiru. Overall, I do think that it's a really fun deck. A lot of people tend to mix their P.U.N.K strategy with like a Chaos Ruler engine, and that may not be the best variant. I'm actually really excited when Gold Pride comes out to make Gold Pride P.U.N.K an extremely powerful deck. It makes the deck almost immune to cards like Nibiru and stuff. It makes the deck really, really powerful. Purrely? So currently, from what I've seen on Master Duel meta, Purrely gets Purrely and Purrely Sleepy Memory. That's insane. If that is true, this is easily one of the best decks in Master Duel. Hypothetically, if there's no limitations to Delicious Memory or anything, that is a genuine threat. This deck is crazy good with those cards available and no limitations to the deck. It is almost catastrophic to deal with. Players are going to have to start playing cards like Kaijus, and it's a deck that does dodge the Nibirus, but the book cards are actually really good against them. So watch out for this deck. If those are true and you get everything with no limitations, Purrely is the best deck in the format, where other decks are just kind of like fighting around Purrely. I would say that Rika never really loses its spot. It's still a really solid choice Yu-Gi-Oh deck and still can be really impactful in the game. I think that Scareclaw is extremely fun. I don't think that it has a lot of things going for it that makes it super impactful against some of the top decks, but it is a one-hit kill machine that can summon some pretty powerful boards and does actually have some good things against Kashtira specifically. Maybe not so many of the other decks because they can link and play around it. Sword Soul is in a different spot. I would say anytime that Nibiru was pretty popular, I would really be hesitant on playing Sword Soul, because now you can't go into your Long Yuan combo, your level 10 Synchro Monster. You pretty much have to go to Baron, which makes the deck pretty much weaker. Tearlament? Yeah, I'm gonna put Tearlament in fun. So, I don't think Tearlament is a good deck at all. I think Tearlament is dead. And the reason why is because I was talking to my boy, God, it wasn't Superb Pat. I was talking to my boy, I can't remember his name right now. Nightcrawler. I was talking to my boy Nightcrawler 95, and what I was telling, I was like, nah, tier is still good. You know, you still got 4 tier cards, you still got your Shirens and your Havenish, you get 2 of each. You know, you still have this, and he was like, yo, the field spell's at 1, and there's no tier limits Kashtira. So I think that those are actually huge for Tearlament. In the TCG, it's really, really powerful because we still have 3 of the field spell, and we also have Tearlament's Kashtira. When those cards come out, I think that makes Tearlament a lot stronger, but for right now, I'm just gonna put it in really fun. I think Thunder Dragon is also in really fun. Its biggest beef is that this deck, like, it's inconsistent as all hell. We played this deck all the way till Masters, so we have extensive knowledge on this deck. When it pops off, this deck is almost unbeatable. But when your opponent imperms the correct cards, you kind of just lose, which is unfortunate. Trap Tricks, I would actually say Trap Tricks takes a really good pilot right now. Both Bukamu, Nibiru, and the Kaiju cards do not affect Trap Tricks as hard as one would want it to be, and it's pretty powerful. And lastly, Makanko, I would put Makanko in the really good pilot range. I think a going second Makanko Kaiju deck is fairly scary because it's a deck that can end games extremely fast. And depending on what Makanko cards you get, the deck becomes more and more powerful. And that's all that I have for the best decks post-Galactic Evolution. I want you guys to let me know down below in the comment section, what do you think? Did I get something wrong? Or if there's something that you think that I'm missing, let me know. I'll actually be even trying to answer if there are strategies that I missed. Where do I think certain strategies you may ask about down below in the description? And of course, be sure to check out these other videos so I can catch you on the next one.